G'day, Mike from Aussie Mike's Bees, and welcome to Q&A number 2. Today I'm only going to do 2 questions. The big one on my mind that I've been struggling with comes out of my last Varroa update video, which was, why would anyone want to kill their bees when it's the end of the eradication program and we can keep them? I've racked my mind. More on that later. But now I'll do the other question. So I've got this question here that came in, and it says this: my mentor says I must have 2 brood boxes, but you have 1. How does that work? Yes, I have 1 brood box on all of my hives and it works fine. This has been explained on multiple websites, multiple YouTube channels. I'm just going to go through it real fast now. First of all, advantages. As I get older, my back doesn't like lifting any excess weight. So if I can cut down on lifting 1 brood box, I'm happy with that. So if you've got double brood boxes, you've not only got to remove the honey supers, but you've got to remove that top brood box before you can inspect in the bottom brood box. You've got twice the number of frames to search for the queen if you're looking for her specifically. So if you normally have 8 frame boxes, that's 16 frames you've got to go through instead of 8. If you're a 20 frame boxer, you've got to go through 20 frames instead of 10. So it's sure making a lot more work. The argument I've heard time and again is that double broods have to be used in cold climates. I don't know. I've seen online North Americans with meters of snow or feet of snow for weeks at a time, and they keep single brood boxes perfectly fine. So I don't see that as an argument. A part of the argument is they build up the big numbers so that then they've got that massive cluster so that can then make its way through winter. But in my mind, if you've got a big cluster, they're eating more honey. So I don't know, does it cause its own problem? My experience with single brood is, yes, in spring they do require a bit more attention for swarm controls. So my approach on that is get in there every 8 to 10 days during spring and early summer, the high growth period, just to keep tabs on them. You can see if they're laying queen cells out, you know that they're getting ready to swarm. So you can nip it in the bud, do management. Why do they swarm? They're basically running out of room. Things are looking good, they're filled up with honey, and what can happen is in the brood box, the queen gets honey bound. If she runs out of places to lay, they're going to swarm. So what do you do as a beekeeper? Take those honey frames out and slip them up to the super and replace them with, you can do foundation or drawn comb. Foundation just makes them work. They want to work. So give them work to do so that they can draw foundation and give the queen more space to lay eggs. So you've got to do that every 8 to 10 days, 7 to 10 according to some, so you could get in there every weekend and just check. The other thing I do to mitigate swarming is I keep relatively young queens in there. Every 2nd or 3rd year I'll just replace. Either get them to make their own, or I'll buy in a bred queen with the traits that I want. I find that queens that are only 2 to 3 years old tend not to swarm. I have Italians. Italians are known for having larger clusters through winter and to consuming a lot of their stores. You could go with Carniolans. As I've learned in Slovenia recently, they have Carniolans, that's their native bee. So Carniolans are noted for reducing the size of their cluster in winter during the brood-free period to a much smaller level than their Italian counterparts. And what's the effect of that? There's less mouths to feed, so they don't go through as much honey to keep the cluster warm. Basically all they're wanting to do to get through to spring is protect the queen and have nice fat bees ready for spring so that they can spring into action when she starts laying and have enough energy to feed them up. The argument put against single brood management is that there's not enough room overall for the queen to lay. I'm going to lay that one to rest right now. Here we have a standard deep. I don't use anything but deeps at this stage in my brood and my supers. So I counted the number of cells down and we've got 47. I've counted the number of cells across and I've got 78. So 78 times 47 is 3,713. And there's two sides, so that's 7,426. So if we multiply that out by 8 frames, that's 59,408. Let's round it down to 59,000. The next number that we need to know is how many eggs does a queen lay and over what period of time. So the first thing we need to know is a worker takes 21 days to get from laid egg to emerged adult bee. 21 days. And the queen can lay, when she's busy, say 2,000 eggs. I don't know if anyone's actually followed a queen around and counted up, so I'm not sure of the accuracy. The number is anywhere between 1,500 and 2,500, so I'm going in the middle there. So 2,000 per day over 21 days, that's 42,000 eggs. In my mind, if we've got 59,000 cells and she's laying 42,000 eggs in that 21-day period, we've got 17,000 spare cells. That's in an 8-frame box. My experience watching that happen is in the busiest time, every frame is filled up with brood all the way to the sides of the boxes, and so you'll have on the outside frame, you'll get, how's it look? You'll get a full inside, but on the side that faces the wall of the box, it is maybe 2/3 full of brood, and the rest is just honey and pollen. You have most of it filled up with brood, so she gets very busy. They don't hold back. Now in a double brood box they lay more of a football shape, but it's spread over the two boxes. In my mind, single frame still works. We've got nothing against that. So that's where we're at. In my view, we have enough cells, as long as you do a reasonable bit of management to keep the honey stores at bay, like not letting her get honey bound, and you keep giving them room. Sometimes if she's super busy, let's say she is doing that 2,500, you might need to pull a couple of frames of brood out of the brood box and slip it in the super. That's no big deal. If they're all workers, they can emerge, they can still come and go through the queen excluder, all good. One of the other things about double brood box, and I haven't done it because I've never ever done double broods, is some practice where maybe in spring, where you've got to take the top box where over winter everyone's moved up to and the bottom box is empty, you flip it around and put that box on the bottom and the bottom box on the top so that they can start filling it up again. Well, single brood, you don't have to think about that. It's not an issue. One of the things you can do with a single brood, if you want to do splits in spring, is just put a box on top with no excluder, let them fill it out, and then when you're ready, or when they're producing cells, or you've bought a queen to occupy, just take one box off from the other one, check which one's got the queen in it, put your new queen in it, and you've got 2 boxes ready to go. Write in the comments what your favourite way is, whether you are double or single or a combination. Tell me what the tipping points are for you, what your reasons for managing your type. If you've got an argument with me, by all means, pick my argument to shreds. I would love to hear from you. Okay, now that other question. This one has been bugging me since the switch to transition to management of Varroa in New South Wales, Australia. Why would you choose to kill your bees when the government said Okay, eradication is no longer compulsory. Up until the 25th of October, you can have the choice to either go through with the eradication and receive the reimbursement. So, and that's not a small amount, that's $550 if you're letting your boxes go as well. I think it's $250 if you're keeping the boxes and you're just killing the bees. But to me, why would you kill your bees? It's just the last thing I'd want to do. Well, I've talked to a local beekeeper in one of the red zones. He was scheduled for his 20 odd hives in his apiary to be destroyed, but they've been sitting there for weeks and weeks on end, months at this stage. And this is the argument that has been presented to me, is that over the long time that it's been sitting there, the exponential growth of mites in that area have really heavily populated all the bee colonies. So the question is, are the bees already compromised? Are they weakened from that many mites feeding on them? Now bear in mind, in Australia at this stage, we don't have any of the viruses that are the main problems overseas. Everywhere else, the mites weaken the bees' immune system and overall nutrition, so that their fitness and length of life is shortened, and that allows viruses to get a hold. But we don't have those viruses yet. So we can actually carry a larger mite load than you can overseas because we don't have that viral risk at this stage. Imagine that, no deformed wing virus here. So you could nurse back a colony to health by feeding them up or doing the treatments now. Now that we're in transition to management, we have to use miticide strips to knock down the numbers. We don't have all the other approved treatments. They're in the mill, they're not far away, so you could be using those to knock the mite levels down. So that's a choice. But now I completely understand why someone would say too much. They've had it too long. I think this health state of the colony is beyond bringing back, given that they'd have to do heavy miticide dosing and regular dosing, plus feed them up. So at this stage, I completely understand those wanting to eradicate, then start from scratch with clean bees. Makes sense to me. So that's the answer to that. Okay, leave your comments down below what you think about that too. What would you do in that circumstance? Thanks for joining me. Tune in again next time for Q&A number 3. Cheers.